field? Or the run rules on the diamond at Love's Field? We're giving you the breakdowns, the bets, and the hot takes from the perspective of two former OU Athletics employees. You're listening to the Maine Line Podcast with Tyler Burton and Adam Jaquez.
Let's go! Let's go! Go!
Let's go. Welcome to the Main Line. I'm Adam Jaquez. No Tyler Burton this week. He is out on honeymoon in Mexico, probably laying by a pool somewhere and enjoying the sun. And we got in a special guest for us this week, Jay Smith from Locked On Sooners and Unfair Sports. Jay, it's been, I think, a little over a year since we last had you on. Welcome back to the Main Line.
Yeah, I was on, and I know we did the deal on the...
You did the live Twitter space.
The space or whatnot. Yeah, so it's been a bit. Glad to be back. You know, I can go infiltrate the guest room now.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us. We'll dive right in. I think, let's start here with the main game that's coming up, which it sounds so weird to say the main game. I hear people have been saying that to me all season. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't equate Maine with an E on the end. I think Maine, like the name of the podcast, it always throws me off. But the Maine Black Bears coming to town for the typical SEC body bag game, which is new to us as Oklahoma fans, but normal for SEC. But what a unique twist that we got this year in terms of this is kind of the most interesting game, I think, in some senses, because it's like, hey, we should be able to go out and dominate and have fun, enjoy this team for the first time in several weeks. But what do you see as just the main goal for this team going into the main game? What do you want to see coming out of it?
I think the big thing coming out of this game, it's really going to be about understanding what we have down the line. This is the depth game. So as you said, as a long-standing member of the SEC, this is something that we're accustomed to. We're accustomed to having that team that we have to beat up on right before we have another big game. And luckily, the next big game is Missouri, then a bye, then Bama, LSU. And so for us, the key thing here, I want to see what the depth looks like. This is when you should start playing a lot of your younger players. This is that quote-unquote extra bye week. This is typically the second bye week you would get in a season, but because how the season actually laid out this year, you're getting 3. So this is that random mid-season bye week on a team that you get to just destroy for the fun of it. But you get to actually see guys play in true game moments. This isn't one of those scripted ones, I guess you could say per se. This is more of you're getting live action. This isn't a scrimmage. This is a true game. Show me what you got. So for me, I want to see what this offensive line looks like. I want to see the young guys get out there. I've been preaching this for a while on all the channels I've been on. I know that the last 4 games of the season, the expectation is we'll get young guys. This is the perfect game for it. So expect them to get some run, and then we can see if they know the plays and can actually execute like we're asking for.
It's so easy for us as fans, especially when you talk about the offensive line and the young guys. We throw out Branson Hickman. He has injuries. I'm just using him as an example, not singling him out necessarily. But you're like, maybe he's not the guy. And Troy Everett goes out, and you're like, well, he's doing the best he can, but maybe he's not the guy. And then we just keep working our way down. Maybe it's Eddie Pierre-Louis. We just keep working our way. And at some point, we're going to run out of guys, and then we're going to say, well, the freshman class is coming in next year. Maybe they'll be the guys. So
Adam's on the field next.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe Adam could do it. I have a 7-month-old son. I'm constantly asking him, like, can you block anyone? Like, but I guess, do you think it's reasonable to, if we're looking out there and like Heath Ozida, 2nd-year guy, that's, it's a little bit high expectations to expect a 2nd-year offensive lineman sometimes to be an absolute stud. So you really want those guys in the offensive line position to grow and mature and become 4th, 5th year type of guys. So like, is it reasonable for us to expect that, hey, these 2nd-year guys are struggling? Can a true freshman really come in and make an impact? And can they do it beyond just a Maine game and go into maybe a Missouri and help Oklahoma get into bowl eligibility?
The question is how bad do they really want it? And I know with a lot of freshmen, I know some that in the recruiting class, they're chomping at their teeth. They got the Birdman hand swipe right now, like, opportunity to start early. Let me go figure out this playbook. And that's really what a lot of these players are doing. They're looking at the opportunity to play early. If they can play early and often and maintain health, knock on wood, then that means that's going to propel them when it comes to being featured as freshman All-American or just All-Americans or just being looked at as key players to pay attention to, especially because all of these dudes want to go play in the NFL at some point. And so for our offensive line, it sucks. It's been a snake-bitten year. I know I've had a lot of people jump in my comments in some videos and they're like, oh, it's a strength and conditioning coach. It's their fault or whatnot. Why is it only happening on the offensive line and the wide receivers? It seems to be one group. Funny enough, you didn't hear much about it with the running backs. Gavin Sawchuk then, of course, ruined that for me recently because he ended up injuring himself in while he was warming up for the game. But truth be told, you haven't really seen it outside of the line and then the 5 wide receivers. And so I went back and looked. I'm like, all right, I know that we've had 8 different configurations of offensive lines in 9 games, which this game coming up is going to be the 8th one in 9 games. I went to go see who's been playing. So your most consistent offensive lineman has been Favichi Wewu, the transfer. He's healthy. He's the only one. He's played 568 snaps. Just listen to that. 568 snaps he's played. He's basically played every snap this season for the most part. Jacob Sexton, 510 snaps. Now he's done. That sucks. Michael Tarkin, 498. He's come out a few times for helmets flying, and he's moved to different positions. Kind of weird. When you get further down the list, who's next on there after Tarkin at 498? Heath Uzeda, 286 snaps. What you're hearing here is dudes can't stay healthy. Underneath him, Troy Everett, 193 snaps. And to be honest, since he's been healthy, he's been your best lineman. Dude has been a monster in the pass blocking right now. He is doing real good. He was giving Walter Nolan fits against Ole Miss. Maybe he's the reason Nolan came out in the first half and didn't play the second half. We don't know. I'm going to speculate and give him the props for something that he probably didn't get props for. I'm just going to say it because it sounds cool. But when you go down the list, Hickman, 187. Jake Taylor, 169. My point behind looking at all these numbers, we ain't had consistency in health. These dudes aren't coming out because they're bad. They're coming out because they're getting hurt. Yeah, Jake Taylor messing up, he's kind of hurting his shoulder or whatnot or abdomen or something. He's got something up in this region not working right. You have Logan Howland. He just got his first really set of snaps over the last couple games, 150 total. Wasn't all that good. But like you just said, he's a redshirt freshman. This is new. He's getting accustomed. A lot of these dudes didn't get to play last season because we had such a veteran group of players. It makes it tough to bring in the super young ones when you've got seniors or juniors and you got sophomores right behind them. These dudes were at the bottom of the list, and coming into this season, we had 6 dudes hit the portal, and it was more so because they realized they weren't going to play. The young dudes were going to jump them, and then they were going to be the backups to them. It'd have been nice if they'd have stuck around. They'd be playing right now. But yet and still, if you go see where a lot of those dudes are now, none of them are getting very many snaps at their new schools.
Yeah. I want to come back to the offensive line here in a moment when we talk about the future, but sticking with just this game against Maine that's coming up, adjacent to the offensive line, who we talk about here, they need consistency. They need to be able to have the rhythm and stay on the field. And there's been so much variance there. Right next to them, though, is the tight end position, which has had, knock on wood, full health throughout the most of the year. Bauer Sharp, it's hard to admit it, but he's kind of the biggest playmaker on the offense. He's a leading receiver. He had the longest reception of the game on Saturday. His mistakes overshadow really heavily the good things that he does, but he does some really nice things. But yet people want to just toss him to the curb and say, let's see what we got out of Devon Mitchell, who hasn't played a snap at all this year. I don't think he even got in against Temple. So nope. I would expect we see him a little bit against Maine, but I don't think that's realistic to think he's the answer there in the same way of, Eddie Pierre-Louis, he might be good, but we're also seeing, the second year guys make mistakes too. I think you kind of have a similar recipe going on there. And what we really need is the consistency of guys just continuing to get more reps and get better. Tell me I'm wrong there, though.
Yeah. In saying that, you make a really good point. You haven't seen Von Mitchell, but guess what? We only got 4 games left. His red shirt's preserved. Good chance you see him now.
Yeah.
And Maine is the perfect game to play him too. Because like you said, Brent Venables mentioned it earlier in one of the press conferences. He talked about how with Von Mitchell, the thing was he wasn't doing the right things he's supposed to. We also got to remember the dude's 17 years old. He skipped a grade to come in early. And even though he has the body of someone that's probably, you know, about 25 and could be playing in the league. All of this here and the way the structure of the body is, still he's 17 years old. And so for him, he didn't come in here like Ryan Williams and go out there and just, you know, do everything perfect down the line and then dominate on the field. He had to get himself right, and he has. He adjusted. They said he's got himself to the point where it's like, no, he wants to do things right, back on track. And so you're probably going to see, this is the, like I said, it's the perfect game to see a lot of the young players, because okay, I'm going to say Maine's not a good team in comparison to us. We should be able, they're small. We should be able to push them around, but this is a great way to see him in live action, to see if he does the intangible things that you're supposed to. One player I wanted to point out too, Caden Helms. Yeah. I would like to see more of him. You can tell that the injury has kind of slowed him up a little bit, but I'll tell you one thing, he'll finish a block and he won't stop until the whistle's blown. That is exactly what you want out of a lot of your good players. You want guys that are willing to just continue to push and work. That way, if your running back, you know, breaks off of a tackle, or if they get flipped around and never touch the ground and keep running, somebody's stopping the dudes around them. So expect the young guy to play, but good point on Bauer Sharp. His bad really outweighs his good, because those drop passes.
Yeah. I like Cam Holmes. He looks good in a uniform. He's a massive dude. I would love to see him. I would love to see Caden McIntyre. I know he's battled some health issues throughout the year, so we'll see. See what's going on there. I think what could probably help this team tremendously is just getting another playmaker back, and Deion Burks seems like maybe the most likely. We'll see. I know he had the setback last year, but this is not an SEC game, so I don't think there's going to be an availability report released Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. So we really won't know. Jalil Farouk, it sounds like Missouri's more of the target for him as far as a return potentially, but I'm not holding my breath on anything at this point. I'm expecting setbacks. I'm expecting guys to just have issues, because that's just kind of the luck that we've had this year. But it certainly feels like, you know, hey, if we can get Deion Burks back, that takes pressure off of Bauer Sharp to be the playmaker that he's being required to be. And some of that maybe is, hey, don't throw a tight end screen on 3rd and 20 or whatever it was. I mean, that he should be blocking for those screens, and maybe you get the ball to Jacob Jordan in that situation. But it just feels like we're so close. Like once we get Farouk back, once we get Burks back, then you can have some elite wide receiver blocking. I know you called that out on Locked On Sooners. I think it was Monday's episode, you know, talking about the edge blocking that you're going to be able to start having a little bit better shape there, and just getting those playmakers back. I think just helps tremendously for this offense, and hopefully we can move that in the right direction and get that momentum going out of this Maine game, because barring catastrophic events, this should be a win. And then Missouri, I think you feel really good going into that one of like, hey, if we can get a solid win against Maine, like we really have a chance to beat Missouri based on the mood and tone that program is emitting right now.
Boy, how the mighty has fallen. Because, I mean, they came off last year 11-2. They've been yapping like crazy. And the minute that Brady Cook went down, oh, boy, everything is falling apart, because Drew Pine is not it. He likes giving the ball away.
Yeah.
He completes a lot of passes, but they're not completed to the right people. But not all from Missouri. We'll talk about them next week. But no, this game is really going to be about figuring out what players are ready to go. And I know some people are thinking that, there's no hope on this team. I disagree. You just want to get healthy. This is a snake bitten season. It's been bad. This reminds me of the 2009 season. For those that are uninitiated, that was the year that Sam Bradford got hurt in the BYU game. I was sitting in Jerry's circus watching that game, and the minute he got hit in the first quarter, I'm like, oh my God, this season is going to suck. And it sure did. But at the same time, you start losing linemen like crazy. Trent Williams, the big time right tackle in the NFL, had to play center at one point. Your right tackle's playing center. That tells you something, right? That your team is really just destroyed. I think they converted a tight end to tackle at one point because they needed more linemen. It was bad. This is basically the same thing that we're seeing this year. So, if anything, to kind of go to your point, we should win this game. We should see young players. We should see more success. And if we can get some of these guys back, like you said, Jalil Farouk, there's rumors around Missouri. Deion Burks, there's rumors between this week and Missouri. He may try to go this week just to get warmed up and prep for Missouri. That takes so much pressure, because I love seeing Zion Kearney on the field as well as JJ Hester because they do one thing that I love. They block. They do a really good job of blocking at wide receiver. And you need wide receivers to block for your running backs to break out, especially if you do like outside zone, or do some tosses or sweeps. You get the running back out there. If your wide receiver's blocking, chef's kiss. But I need them to do better with their routes. I need y'all to get yourselves open. And if the pass is thrown to you, catch that bad boy. I'm hoping that we get more Kearney, especially as we talk wide receivers. I'm hoping that we get more Kearney because I really want to see him. Because the only issue I see with the other guys like Zion Ragin as well as like Brennan Thompson is they're smaller dudes. So it ain't their fault. It's more so the quarterback not being able to see them because you're putting big corners on them. And so it's the timing routes have to be a little bit better. And they have to make sure they break perfectly on that timing route to where when the ball's there, they're turning and they're already in their hands because you got to go off of the fact that you want to visibly see where they're at. You just need to just chunk it and hope that they run underneath it and catch it. In which to me, with BT, just do that. Do that like 3 or 4 times in the game. I don't care if you complete them. Just make sure either he catches it or it's overthrown. Don't leave anything to chance. Don't do like Dylan Gable did last year where he would underthrow and the wide receiver would come back. We don't want that. Overthrow or the wide receiver runs underneath it and catches it because they're fast enough to do it. But having like a Burks and a Farouk, teams have to respect them. And by respecting them, that takes the brackets off of Brennan because that's what Ole Miss did. If you go back and rewatched it, they were double teaming him. And you're like, why are they double teaming this dude? Because he would dust them if he didn't double team them. So they had to do bracket at the top, underneath, and they were just trailing him. It's like, oh man. And then they started to do a little bit that with Hester. And that's when you started seeing, Jackson run the ball. He had like over 100 yards rushing if you take out the sacks. So I think like 99, which is pretty darn good.
Yeah.
In my personal opinion, quarterback who can run for almost 100 yards in a game. Just don't get sacked 6 times in 7 plays. That's never a good thing. But I digress. If we can get these wide receivers a little bit healthier and guys that is going to go hard like Farouk, the blocking will improve and then the run game can probably open up even more.
You mentioned the 2009 team, which always raises the memory for me of Brandon Caleb being one of the top wide receivers of that team. He had 100 yards, 2 touchdowns against Tulsa. I think that was before Ryan Broyles returned the following week against the Miami game. So there's your random OU player of the past for this episode. But that just kind of reminded me of that. And it feels like we're kind of getting that this year with the random guys. Maybe hopefully Jacob Jordan has a good career against OU. Maybe he's a guy that like this is his year and like he's kind of those weird trivia question later on. But I want to ask you about something that was brought up in Brent Venables' press conference today about Jackson Arnold. We actually ran a poll on our Twitter account the other day at the Mainline Pod asking, of the options of Jackson Arnold, Michael Hawkins, or some unknown transfer portal guy, who do you want as QB1 next year? And overwhelming, I was actually surprised. 90% said Jackson Arnold over the other 2 options, which is a real stark change in where we were 3 weeks ago because people wanted to ship Arnold out. They didn't want anything to do with him. They never wanted him to touch the field again. And now we're like, yeah, this is our guy.
I like him.
Now, admittedly, I will raise my hand and kind of say like, hey, after Tennessee, I was a little nervous about going to Hawkins. I probably didn't, lay it all out on the table and say like, yeah, I'm fully behind him at this point. But I will toot my own horn a little bit there. But Brent Venables was asked about like, hey, is Arnold coming back? And I'll quote from him. He said, you're dang right. He wants to be back. Why would he not? He's made of the right stuff. There was a much, much longer answer there. Brent Venables basically never stopped talking earlier today. But that was kind of the gist of what he said there. And I don't know how you took that, Jay, or if you had a chance to listen to that, but it almost sounded to me like Brent Venables was more campaigning for that than it was him actually knowing that potentially. So I guess my question to you is, do you believe Brent Venables that Jackson Arnold has basically said, hey, I do want to come back. I know there's a lot of things that need to change, offensive coordinator, so on and so forth, but do you believe that or not? And if not, do you believe that there's more that needs to be done in the recruitment to get Arnold to return in 2025?
So I did get to watch the presser. I put out a video a couple hours ago, kind of walking through it as well. You can check out, my stuff over on my channel, Unfair Sports. But on that one, I can see exactly what you're saying about the campaigning. I do. But when it comes to these two quarterbacks, which, we're lucky to have both of them, one's a legacy Sooner. The other one has dreamed of being the quarterback of the University of Oklahoma. Remember, Jackson Arnold wasn't even recruited by the old regime. The minute that the new regime came in, that was one player that they reached out to because he, in Denton Guyer, not very far, and he immediately committed. He wanted to come to Oklahoma. This was the school he dreamed about playing for. And Brent Venables talked about that at the beginning of the season and even when he was going through his problems. And I love the fact that he pointed out that Jackson is made of the right stuff. Because once you're going to start hearing these questions about Michael Hawkins, he's going to say the exact same thing about him. Both of these dudes want to play at Oklahoma. And I'm going to be honest, I believe that I think there's a very easy path to keep both of them next year. But what's going to happen, in my personal opinion, is that you will need to have a QB battle. It needs to be a competition. No one needs to be named QB initially. But go through the spring. Whoever looks the best, whoever actually makes it happen, that's your starting quarterback. The other one would need to be redshirted. And I think if you go down that path, because we had to burn both of them, unfortunately, the way that the season is gone, if you do that, you keep both of them. Because I know initially the big thing with Hawkins was he was coming here to redshirt. And he was going to learn, he's going to take his time, and then he was going to go out there and be the quarterback after Jackson left. That was always in the picture. Now that the road has kind of turned a few times, I believe that path can still be there. You redshirt Hawkins next year, because then you have Brendan Zurbrugg as a backup at that point, get a transfer quarterback just so you have experience just in case, someone that's ready to get into coaching at that point. You know what I mean? Somebody that's probably not going to go to the league. You do that, give Jackson the experience behind him he needs if he wins it, or if not, you redshirt. If he redshirt next season, then I think Jackson Arnold's going to leave. But I don't believe that he actually wants to go. He could have probably announced his transfer after he was benched against Tennessee. He could have redshirted and said, I'm out. That's the one thing I will say about Brent and the entire press conference. The one thing a lot of people keeps telling me is that they believe some of the players have quit. If they have quit, they would not be on this team. If we believe Brent Venables is the guy that we say he is. And he said it even in the presser. I'll help them with their luggage and help them leave. I think that he'd be willing to send one of them packing if they said, you know what, I don't think I want to play. I think I'm going to go ahead and bounce. Okay, let me help you out. No reason for you to be here for practice anymore. No reason for you to be sitting around here at all. So I do think that there's probably been some sort of communication with them that, no, I want to play here. I just want an opportunity. And as long as they give both the opportunity in the spring and a winner takes all situation, I do think that both of them will come back next season.
I've been very impressed with the composure, the confidence that he's shown coming back from being benched. He looked really good against South Carolina. Wasn't really expected to play. Went to Ole Miss, his first road start. Feels weird that it took that long for him to get his first road start, but I thought he looked good considering the situation. And that confidence and composure, I think, will lead to some really good things as he continues to progress with how he's reading the defense, getting the ball out faster, to his spots faster. I think that will all serve him really well. Now, a lot of people are saying, hey, you've got to basically shore up the offensive line in order to get Jackson Arnold to commit to coming back. We don't know that that's a concern that Arnold has, but at least from an OU fan perspective, you definitely want to see some improvement there. Now, you mentioned a little bit earlier that, hey, when you go to the transfer portal, it's kind of slim pickings out there. It might be hit and miss. You might have to make like an absolute elite evaluation to find a guy at Utah State or something like that and have to like just nail it, because there's not a lot of guys that are coming from other SEC programs. Here's an example. Lance Hurd, we really wanted him to come to Oklahoma. He's gone to Tennessee instead. He's been kind of up and down, not exactly been up to the billing there. So even those guys you can miss on. So I think you kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier too. It almost feels like, and it's a hard pill to swallow for OU fans, but it feels like this offseason, the theme is going to be internal development. Is Heath Ozida going to take a huge leap forward? Is Logan Howland going to take a huge leap forward? Can Jacob Sexton and Jake Taylor get settled and say, hey, here are your positions. You're not moving from left tackle and right tackle, if that's what it is. And you're going to be completely healthy throughout the entire spring, fall camp, going into next year. And it just feels like cohesion, internal development is Oklahoma's best scenario to getting the best offensive line in 2025 and not necessarily relying on, let's go spend millions of dollars in the portal for potentially unknown.
Yeah, and that's where the problem lies. You know what you got at home. You know what you got in your cupboard. You know what you got you can work with there, and hopefully you can work with that and make something happen. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But I think if anything, this offensive line, as we talk about them, they have now learned what it's like playing in the SEC. They have firsthand experience in understanding, oh, my preparation needs to change. The funny thing is, the defense seems like they took their preparation a lot more serious than the offense. Remember, they may go through all the same prep as far as like working with Schmitty and workouts and all of that, but it's the extra stuff is the question, the extra things that you do. And now it seems like, to me, hopefully the offensive line looks at this and says, yep, we need to put some extra work in. We need to get a nasty streak and start getting really nasty out there with these hits and running through people. That's probably the most important component of it, because you're right. Internal development is the most important piece when it comes to especially an offensive line. You can't go out there and think that a piecemealed line is going to work here in the SEC. I mean, honestly, think about it this way. Go look at Alabama. They've had some struggles on the offensive line. And remember, they have a few transfers on that line too. So they're still trying to figure out some of their cohesion and getting their chemistry going as well. Even though they brought in a few dudes from Washington that were part of that Joe Moore Award-winning line, they had some struggling moments or whatnot. And they still have their quarterback that's trying to figure things out as well, because Milroe hasn't been the best. He's been good enough, but he hasn't been good enough to win certain games that they needed to win. Let me put it that way. So for us, the key thing is for this line is figuring out you've got to work your butts off in preparation for the rest of these games. And as I talked about before, when you look at the snap counts, out of our 15 in the 3 deep, 8 of them are sophomore, redshirt freshman, or freshman. They're all super young. You want to come into the SEC with juniors and seniors, and all of them are transfers. Our juniors and seniors are all transfers. Just about every single one of them. We don't have any internal guys besides Jacob Sexton. Jake Sexton is really your only guy that is up there in actual age. And, he went through the knee injury against Florida State. He was hurt most of last season and barely got in. And he finally got back because he, went through surgery after the Florida State game in the Cheez-It Bowl. So now this was his first year of opportunity to play a full year, and he's getting his body right. So, like you said, Heath Uzeda is going to need to make a big jump. Waywu, luckily, he's got another year. He's been your most consistent, probably not the best, but the most consistent. He's got another year. Troy Everett's got another year. So that's 3 dudes right there in the front that you're going to get to keep for next year. Sexton and Taylor will be back. You'll have 5 offensive linemen returning next year. But then the young guys. If Isaiah Autry goes out there and shows out, he may end up playing. If EPL looks like a beast, he may jump Uzeda, and Uzeda gets to play right behind him, right? So you've got opportunities here. You've got players that are building the development you need. So that next jump, that next level back won't be as much of a drop-off as it was this year. You won't have to have as many configurations. Let's put it that way. If we can go into a season where we're not running a new configuration every week, I think we'll be fine.
That would help a lot. Well, you heard it here on the main line. Jay Smith, myself, we are big fans of Jacob Sexton. So save your hate mail, anyone out there. No one in particular. But yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, you go through those snap counts that you mentioned earlier in the show, like it's almost jaw-dropping, the gap on some of those, and like just how so many guys just haven't been playing, but maybe like 2 or 3 games, and that's all the snaps they have, and we just don't have that. So I do think that, like, when we look at the portal and where that goes this offseason, yeah, you probably do bring in like a guy or two, but it's not going to be, hey, a whole line change. Really, you're losing Spencer Brown, Branson Hickman, and that might be it on the offensive line, unless I'm missing someone. So
Tarquin. Tarquin,
well. Thank you. Yes,
that's so your 3 guys that are gone after this year because they're all senior redshirt. Seniors are redshirt, seniors are super seniors.
You're not losing a ton there. So I do think you will find some guys to come in and compete. You definitely say, hey, like, wasn't good enough. Let's see if we can recruit over these guys, but we're not going to rely on the portal necessarily for offensive line solutions completely. Internal development is going to be a huge piece of that. And I think, too, a lot of people are saying, well, just take what you did for Dominic Williams, move that over to the offensive line, problem solved. I don't think that solves it either. And I don't think you want to take all the attention away from defense either. I know Brent surely won't, but you definitely want defense not to be ignored because it's not a finished product yet. It's very good, but it's not a finished product by any stretch. And they've got a long way to go as well. So I think they'll be looking for some more playmakers on the defensive line. So we'll see how all that plays out. I do want to ask you this, Jay, because the offensive coordinator position is one that Oklahoma's going to have to fill at the end of the year. And so we have you here on the show. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What are the qualities of the offensive coordinator that you want to see, whether that be, play calling experience, quarterbacks coach, you've been at a Power 4 school, or maybe it's scheme wise, maybe it's just philosophy. Like, what is it that you want to see out of an offensive coordinator?
If there's anything that I want to see, I want to see somebody with a pro style offense, something that can really hold up here in the SEC. If you go look at a lot of the teams that struggle the most are the ones that don't have really a pro style setup when it comes to their offense. And so you're going to need something that's going to be able to get not only the run established, but you're going to have to be able to make sure the quarterback is comfortable and they can make quick decisions. The complexities of the offense is critical, and I don't want anything too gimmicky. Like it's no shade to the one gimmicky one that everybody wants, but SEC defensive coordinators figure that stuff out really fast.
Yep.
But I also want y'all to keep this in mind. Oklahoma truly is considered a springboard job when it comes to the coordinators. Coordinators don't typically come here for very long, especially on the offensive side. The only reason why, put it this way, the reason why Lincoln Riley was moved to the head coach position from offensive coordinator is because he was going to get offered some head coaching jobs. And Bob Stoops saw that, knew that he had to replace that, and he asked himself, do I really want to replace that again? I just did it with Heupel, and it's going great. Do I want to deal with that again? And he's like, nah, pass it on. I'm going to go ahead and step away from it anyway. I was ready to step away. And that's, and that's history. Defensive coordinators stick around a lot longer because they're not really sought after as much. You have to really have a head coaching mentality in order for you to get hired as a head coach from defensive coordinator. Think about it. Kirby Smart was with Nick Saban for like 9 years before he went to Georgia. And it took him 7 years to get them to the glory land. So I know everybody's like, yeah, you want to do everything like Georgia. Hey, you got to give Brent like 4 more years. Now, they kept getting 10-win seasons, but they were losing the most critical games in order to get them over the hump. But he kept bringing in offensive coordinators, kept switching it out, kept churning. I mean, think about it this way. When Saban first got to Bama, and I like bringing him up because he's the GOAT, and I want people to understand just how hard this truly is. When Saban got to Alabama, he had Will Muschamp. He was offensive coordinator for 4 years. After that, Saban had offensive coordinators, a new one once every 2 years at minimum. Some of them only lasted a year. Brian Daboll was the offensive coordinator for the first year that Jalen Hurts got there. Brian Daboll, NFL coach. He was the offensive coordinator at Bama for 1 year, didn't make it, got up and went into the NFL. So the list of offensive coordinators, when you go back and look, he had a lot of them. Lane Kiffin was the one that helped to change the way they looked and got more innovative. And that was the thing Saban kept looking for. Who's the guy that's innovative enough that I can bring in and kind of trust to run the O and go? Because with Venables, he's bringing this with a similar approach as Dabo. And it's either going to be amazing or it's going to fail miserably. In this situation, it failed miserably because he took a former head coach. He let him be the CEO of the offense and let him run things. What happened? Didn't work out. It looked like it. It looked like it was him doing everything. So for me, I want a coach that runs pro style. I want one that could truly be the CEO of the offense and actually collaborates with everyone there. From that part, I want us to know and understand and be prepared, because this is a springboard job. As I bring this back full circle, don't expect an offensive coordinator to be here longer than 2 years.
That would be,
if he's successful,
yep,
they're gone. And it's not because they don't want to be here. They're going to get a head coaching job making double what they're making as an OC. So unless you want to pay your OC more than your head coach or about what your head coach is making, expect changes at least every 2 years. Heck, Levy was here. Did great. Top 10 offenses. What happened? Somebody snatched his butt up. It's going to happen. And that's what happens when you have really good offensive coordinators when you're a defensive-minded coach. if Brent Venables was an offensive guy and we was running his system, the offense would be great. The question would be, what's the defensive coordinator doing? And there, the defensive coordinator would stick around. That's kind of how that works. But again, if Nick Saban had to go through a whole bunch of dudes, don't expect Brent Venables to not go through a whole bunch of dudes. Expect this to change on a regular basis and be okay with it. That's what I don't think fans are prepared for. I don't think they're prepared for the fact that Lebby took a head coaching job like that, and the next dude is going to do the exact same thing within 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. Let me ask you about Brent, because you mentioned Kirby Smart there and Nick Saban, who are running through offensive coordinators at a regular basis, but neither of those guys were necessarily on a warm seat and definitely not on a hot seat at any point in that tenure. Brent Venables is going to go into 2025 with at least a warm seat, probably a hot seat of some kind. And we've seen it kind of play out in other situations. Look at Jimbo Fisher down at A&M. He brings in Bobby Petrino his final year. Doesn't work out. He gets fired. Look at Charlie Strong in 2016. Team is suffering. He brings in Sterling Gilbert, one of the hottest offensive coordinators out of Tulsa. That was going to solve all their problems. Didn't work out. Charlie Strong got fired. I want you to give me a little bit of hope here. Unless you're looking at this negatively, why do you think Brent Venables in his situation is different than maybe some of those negative stories that we see from other coaches that are just grasping at something, trying to get something to stick on, an offensive coordinator hire, and it ends up not working out?
Brent Venables made a very critical mistake when he started. He was too nice.
Yep.
That was what he did wrong. If there was anything that I feel like he did wrong, had somebody else mentioned to me and they said it, and I was like, yeah, that's a damn good point. That's a really good point there. He came in, and this was seen as shade when he said it. In a way it was, but at the same time, you got what he meant here. He said he doesn't want to be like Coach Prime. He doesn't want to walk in here, bring his own luggage, and tell him that it's Louis. He didn't want to make people feel like, we're walking in here and we're kicking you out. Because, again, the team he took, won 10 games, 11 games, if I'm correct. So he did not come into a terrible situation. But the thing you did lose was your quarterback, which you basically watched carry the team to all the victories. And then the backup quarterback said, I'm out too. So you come in, you're restarting it at quarterback. You have no clue what you truly have at the offensive line, because also remember, offensive-minded coaches like to get certain type of players around their offense. So they have a say around everything you have. I went back and evaluated a lot of the classes that we had. And that's why I said when it comes to offensive line, we didn't have any upperclassmen because all of them transferred out. We should have had them transfer out as soon as Venables got here. Now, granted, he got here in December because, Lincoln left right after the championship game, right after the Bedlam, and the portal and everything, he didn't really have as much time to go do all the work in there that you would have liked to have. But he basically went, and we probably would have had more of a 4-8 season than a 6-7 season if he would have cleaned house then. But I'll say he should have cleaned house after the first season. That's when you should have went ahead and just start cutting. Handing people say, hey, it's great for you to be here. We appreciate it. But there's a very good chance you won't get much playing time. And it's nothing against them. But we saw what product we were getting out of these players. But then from there, guess what? After this past season, when we come into the SEC, what happened? We lost 6 of those dudes. That's when they all bailed. And that's when you're coming in here now with a whole bunch of young dudes. And that's where his fatal flaw was. You wanted to come into the SEC with redshirt sophomores and juniors. That's what you wanted to come in with. And you did not come in with that. By not coming in with that, you put yourself behind on the offensive side of the ball. Because look at the defense. Defense is a whole bunch of upperclassmen. And you can tell. They play like upperclassmen. They make some mistakes. They're, football players. College football is not built to benefit the defense. But they're playing at a level of upperclassmen. The offense ain't. Why? Because the offense ain't got enough of them. We need more of them. So we had to transfer some in. And the problem with one position in this game, offensive line, you can't just bring dudes in and hope it works. You need chemistry. You need cohesion. You need that stuff to work out. you're injured, and you're constantly swapping dudes around, you're going to go through hell. We've already seen it. Colorado, for example, as I mentioned them, basically Prime kicked everybody out, came back, and the next year did it again, right? He walked in and said, y'all are 1-11. What makes me think that y'all are good enough to be on this team? So he started to send people out, and it was considered rude and harsh and cold. But that's what coaches do. That's realistic. It's realistic conversations they have and say, look, I don't think you're going to be able to play here. So he did that. Afterwards, 4-8, he looked around again and said, nope, this was good. This was cool. This was a good starting point. Now we know where we need to level up at. Change the staff, start changing players again. 2 years in a row, had the most transfers. Now he's 6-2. Shouldn't have lost to Nebraska. That Kansas State game shouldn't have lost either, to be honest. They should have done a lot better. But in the end, Adam, look at it this way. He did all that refreshing, but the one position he had to refresh was what? Quarterback. He had his dude. So that makes all the difference. If Dylan Gabriel could have come back. Now, granted, Brent Venables mentioned that he would have loved to have had Dylan come back. Dylan didn't want to come back because he didn't want to, stifle Jackson Arnold's growth. If we had Dylan Gabriel back, things would have been a little bit different. While at the same time, with all those injuries to wide receivers, I don't think you can fix that. Losing your wide receivers, losing your offensive line, that hurts. Now, I do think that Dylan would have done better with the younger receivers because he could have probably guided them a lot better just because he's a veteran. He's been in college football, 6-7 years. That helps. But coming in young on offense is what killed it. It killed it really bad. And now we're just going to have to figure it out from there.
Normally we in the show with our best bets, Tyler being out, we won't go through those. If you want to see that, it's linked in our show notes and in the description on YouTube. And then we go through our score predictions. Jay, I don't want to steal your thunder if you're saving that for maybe a show later in the week.
No, let's go.
But yeah, let's do it. Tell us how you see this game playing out against Maine and give us a score prediction then.
So I looked at the spread. The last spread I was able to see that was available was 34.5. It opened at 31.5, and then it went to 34.5. And now I don't see it on many boards anymore. Everybody started to yank it. So that means that the expectation is that we're probably going to go out there and destroy them. So I actually think the over/under number I saw was the total number I saw last was 48.5. I think we win 50-0.
I like that. I went with 45-3. I think the defense and special teams probably, sets Oklahoma up in some very favorable positions. Maybe they score themselves. It's been a little while since this defense has had a truly meaningful turnover. So I expect to see some of that return. And I think Oklahoma will be able to score. Maybe it's not super pretty, but I think they will score, and they will try to score continuously throughout the game.
Agreed.
I mean, you look back at Temple, a very similar type of team and probably quality and skill. Maybe Maine's a little bit better. Maybe they're a little bit less, but they're kind of in that neighborhood. And, Oklahoma still put up 47 against Temple. So I expect that. Tyler did text in his score prediction. He says Oklahoma 34, Maine 6. So he's a little bit more pessimistic there. But I think we'll see some fireworks, and I'm actually kind of looking forward to this game. I'm bringing some nieces and nephews. I'm kind of like, it should be a good time. It'll be fun again. It'll be fun again to see some OU football. So hopefully it's a good game. Hopefully the weather holds and we don't get, sitting out there in rain or lightning or anything like that. But Jay, we really appreciate you jumping in, filling in for Tyler while he's being a lazy bum out by a pool or a beach or something like that. So
let's address that real quick. I mean, that's cool and all. Did he really get married during the football season?
He got married the day before the South Carolina game. And I told him after that, I was like, dude, that now you have that wedding, your anniversary is bookmarked with probably one of the worst, most awful performances that OU has had on a football field. So you kind of have those two together, but I'm sure he'll listen to this on the plane back or something like that. And he will take exception to that, but
I'm hurt.
You have a great point there.
I'm hurt.
I've got your Unfair Sports linked in the show notes in the description. I've got Locked On Linktree in there. I've got your Twitter linked in there. But for people that don't know who you are, what you're doing on a regular basis, educate the folks a little bit.
Yeah, you can find me, Jay Smith, Unfair Sports, Locked On Sooners on YouTube, as well as wherever podcasts I download and listen to. I'm all over the place, and I like to jump on other shows and help out whenever I can. And when I'm not traveling, that is, I can jump on and hang out. So, Adam, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. It's a good time.
Yeah, thanks for jumping on, Jay. Appreciate everyone for watching live or listening later on. We'll be back next week. I don't know if we'll do Tuesday nights, election day. We'll see if maybe we switch to a different day and let everyone enjoy all the fun that happens there. But we appreciate everyone for joining us this week. We'll see you next time for the next Main Line.